Hello my bookish friends, welcome or welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley and today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in March and April. I only read 5 books in March. 5? 1? Yeah. Well, really, you weren't missing out on a whole lot, although some of these are really good, so I need to tell you about them. So I have 13 books to talk about in total. Nothing crazy, but definitely more than I have been sharing with you lately in my wrap-ups because I've only been reading 5, 6, 7 books a month. I read 8 books in April. So 8 in April, 5 in March, and as usual, I'm going to tell you about them, starting with the lowest rated in my opinion, and then working my way up to my favorite. These are mostly thriller and horror books, though there is one true crime book in here, which I'm not going to rate as of now. That is also my book club book. The discussion is tonight as of when I'm filming this, so I really still haven't wrapped my mind around it, and I honestly don't even know if I'm going to rate it. But anyway, so there's that one. I have one short story collection. Other than that, they're all thriller and horror except for another book club pick that I don't even know what genre this is, but we're gonna talk about it really soon because that's my only 2-star. Every other book on this list I gave 3.5 stars or higher, which means I would absolutely recommend them. So I'm really excited to tell you about all of these new books that I read because I've been kind of desperate to find that 5-star, which I did, by the way. I've really been kind of intentional about picking up the books that I have been picking up. You gave me recommendations, 5-star recommendations in one of my last videos, and thank you so much for that. I have been using them and I'm putting a video together, a vlog, so stay tuned for that. I want to first start off by telling you about my nonfiction book. As of right now, I'm not going to rate this because I just don't know how I feel about rating nonfiction books if it's not a 5-star. It's a 5-star, then I'm like, yes, I'll give it a 5-star, of course. But I just don't think for me personally that the book format is my favorite way to consume true crime. I think I'd much rather have a documentary. I'd much rather have a podcast above this. I can see that he did go out of his way, or the people that bought the rights to the audiobook anyway, I did read this via audio mostly, went out of their way to switch it up. There were, I think, 3 different audio narrators for part 1, part 2, and part 3. I did not like the female audio narrator, which is rare for me. Typically, I want a woman narrator or a feminine sounding narrator. I didn't like this one. It felt like scrolling through Wikipedia for like 3 hours. So that first part just really dragged for me. But then in the second part, it moves on to like when the FBI comes in. And I guess I haven't even told you what this is about. I've just kind of assumed that people know what this is about. But Killers of the Flower Moon was recently made into a film adaptation directed by Martin Scorsese, and this is the true history and true crime story of what happened to the Osage people in Oklahoma in the kind of turn of the century, early 1900s into like the 30s, I guess, and continuing on even. But the Osage Indians originally lived somewhere else and they got kicked out. And so the government said, okay, you can take this land in Oklahoma that nobody wants. And then they later found out that this land that they were forced into is full of oil. It's full of oil. And so they become the richest people per capita in Oklahoma and maybe even in the country or maybe even in the world. I don't know. They were so filthy rich. The comparisons of the money that they gave in here, like in today's dollars, it would be this much, were astounding, staggering. Let me see if I can find one right quick. Oh, so they lived in Kansas originally. It says in the early 1870s. Okay, so this is a long span of time. The Osage had been driven from their lands in Kansas onto a rocky, presumably worthless reservation in northeastern Oklahoma, only to discover decades later that this land was sitting above some of the largest oil deposits in the United States. In 1923 alone, the tribe took in more than $30 million. In comparison to today's money, that would be $400 million in 1 year. $400 million in oil, which is just crazy. And anyway, these people were just trying to live their damn lives and someone started killing them off. They started getting killed off one by one, and then the people who were trying to help figure out why they were getting killed off, those people were getting killed off, and then they brought in the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, all of the things. I'm gonna link our live show down below and above, but I'm sure Sandra and I will get way deep into it. I'm not gonna do that right now. but I think it's so awesome that this story is being shared. I think it's infuriating that this kind of stuff is not taught, that we ignore this part of American history because it's doesn't look good on us, clearly, because these people were swept under the rug. They were not even considered fully human. Like, the whole argument was, does it really even count that they were murdered because they were Indians, because they were indigenous, because they were brown, because they looked different, because whatever. The consensus around that time is that these Native American people were less than human. So then it was okay in their eyes. There's a lot. So definitely interesting. Don't think true crime, nonfiction is like my thing specifically, but I am very glad that I read this and I can't wait to watch the movie now that I can because I've read it. Let's move on. Number 2, and my 2-star book for this month is And Then There Was Silence by Candace Robinson. This was the Midnight Society Book Club pick in March. So sad and disappointing because I thought when I picked this one, like, oh, there's something different about that. There's something different about it is what I thought. And I thought, well, if this is someone that's not traditionally published and then, you know, this would give us a chance to like bring up these authors that don't get that kind of marketing normally. But unfortunately, again, this was not for me. I don't think this was terrible. I do think it was marketed incorrectly. This is set to be her horror debut. And the other books that this author has written, it's so shiny, I'll just pop it up. The other books that this author has written are all like fantasy, vampire, romantic-y type stuff. And this one was really no exception to that. It was that minus like the vampires and the fairies. Our main characters were horror fans in this story. And so I think that's why it was misinterpreted, because the things that this character loves about horror, I love about horror too, but I couldn't relate to the horror elements in this story. It's really hard to explain because it started getting a little bit supernatural. I don't think it was a horrible book. It definitely was not for me. It was not what I wanted it to be. So I'm sorry, Candace, but this was not accepted. This was rejected. Oh, for the Midnight Society Book Club. Hate to do it, but I couldn't. I can't, I'm sorry. And I don't want to dwell on this. I don't even know what it was that I didn't like about it. If it was that my expectations were off, or if it was that it just felt like some kind of cutesy. I think if you really like The Nightmare Before Christmas, like Halloween type horror type stuff, like I think you would like And Then There Was Silence. But otherwise, if you're looking for what I was looking for when I go into a horror, is I like horror that's hard-hitting, but also has heart, has like that soft spot that it's touching on by way of something else. That's what I love about horror, is that we can use other things to talk about these real things that affect us every day, that torture souls, and not just necessarily in like a serial killer way or in like a vampire way or whatever, but it could be in that way. You know, it's just, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So we have to move on. My first 3.5-star book that I want to talk to you about is The Watchers. This is by A.M. Shine. And I did also watch the film adaptation of this, and they're kind of blending together right now. So forgive me if I misspeak about anything in reference to the movie or the book. I did enjoy this one. It was definitely original. And again, this is one that's kind of like borderline cosmic horror, but also the characters were so well developed in here. We have one character in here, Madeline, who is like such a great unlikable character who we get to really explore on a deeper level throughout the book. It's kind of giving Bird Box by Josh Malerman. What's that other one by Christina Henry that I liked with the monster thing, that you really never see the monster, you don't know what it is, you don't really know what the threat is, but you like feel the threat. Our main character in this story is Mina, and I really liked Mina. I really liked following her. She is doing this like side job trying to deliver this bird, who is also a character in the story called the Yellow One, I think, if I remember correctly, which was kind of confusing at first because they just kept saying the Yellow One and not really saying that was what they called the bird. So you're like, is there a blue one? Is there a red one? Like, why is it the yellow one? And then once they just continue to refer to it as that, then you just kind of go with it. Similarly to Bird Box, again, they have that bird, and that bird does protect them in a way. She's decided that she's gonna make some money by delivering this bird, and she's in this deserted area in this forest, really, and she gets to the tree line and her car breaks down. Everyone's car breaks down there. And then that's one of those things where it's just like, that's just what happens. We really don't have an explanation for it. It's a dead zone or something. She's looking to find something, anything, someone to help her. A woman starts screaming at her to run, run, run. So she runs with this woman and they run into this like random bunker in the middle of the woods. All the walls are full glass so you can see inside. They shut the bunker door, and then at a certain time when night falls, the watchers come out. They can be out during the day, but they know that at night they have to go back to this bunker, and they can't see out because the lights are on inside, so they can't see what these monsters look like. They don't know anything. As you're reading the story, you don't really know who to trust. You're trying to figure out what's going on. What I liked most about this story was the ending had one of those last minute little zingers that I really love. That's just like, oh, do we know everything or don't we? Because we're not sure. This is one that could certainly have like a sequel, but it's not super open-ended. Let me see. When did this come out? Oh, 2021. So it probably would have been out by now, but maybe not. Maybe there's still time for a sequel for this. But yeah, I think if you're a fan of isolation, if you're a fan of Josh Malerman's Bird Box, if you're kind of tired of the same old thriller or horror and you want something with a slight twist to it that does feel really original and refreshing, I would check this one out. I had a good time with this. And it was definitely creepy. Gave me like those like creepy vibes, so. 3.5 stars. I really liked it. It's got 3.98 as of now on Goodreads. My next 3.5 star book that I want to talk to you about is Ruth Ware, 0 Days. I was kind of mad at myself because I didn't read this until now, because I am like a diehard Ruth Ware fan, and most of her books are, I don't know if any of her books are 5 stars for me, TBH, but they're all pretty high. Most of them are 4 stars for sure. First of all of her audiobooks are narrated by Imogen Church, who I adore as an audio narrator. My favorite audio narrator. I love her accent. I love the way she speaks these characters. She just makes them feel so relatable to me. Love Imogen Church. She did an excellent job as always on this audiobook. The audiobook I would highly recommend. This is her most thrillery book. I think Ruth Ware tends to get a lot of flack for mismarketing her books as thrillers, and then when they turn out to be mysteries, people get upset because they are more of a slow burn, more of an atmospheric with really fleshed out characters. And this one definitely was faster paced than some of her other books. It was very high stakes and quick moving. I think I read this in like 2 days, so it was pretty fast. One problem I have with the way this one was marketed is that I heard it compared to, and I don't know if it was from Booktube, if it was from the publisher, I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard it compared to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and never seen the movie, never been interested in watching that, and it immediately turned me off. So I think that really had a lot to do with the fact that I didn't read it until now. But I would not compare this to that, because when I think Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm thinking spy. I'm thinking like Jason Bourne, but with a couple, and to an extent, we are getting that in that it is very, like I said, high stakes and fast paced, but they're not spies. They're not spies. So we're following Jack and her husband, Gabe, and they're penetration specialists. So what that means is that they're basically really good at breaking and entering. They charge businesses to break into their business and see how easy it is, see where the loopholes are, see what corners are not being covered, what anybody might potentially get through. And that's not just like in the building, but also with any of their online information, data, all of that. And so they are a team. Jack does the in-person. She's the sweet talker. She's really good at talking her way in situations, making people purposefully feel uncomfortable maybe so that they won't pay attention to what she's doing over here, kind of like a magician. Gabe is the computer guy. He's a total computer nerd geek, but we don't actually get to meet Gabe because when we first start this movie, it felt like a movie, I will say. When we first come into this story, Gabe's dead, essentially, from chapter 1. They're on a job and Jack comes home and Gabe's dead. Like I said, his throat is slit. She has no idea what happened, but it's starting to look like maybe she was involved. This is like a crime thriller, I would call it, because we do have the perspective as well of a detective. She's got Jack in her sights. Like, she thinks she's responsible for this, and so Jack has to figure out who killed her husband before they narrow in on her, because she knows she didn't do it and she does not want to be unjustly, like, the worst thing is that she's lost her husband who she's in love with, but she doesn't want to then be unjustly accused of killing him. The murderer goes free, she's in jail, she's lost everything. Like, she is so unhinged in this story, and I think that's my favorite part is just this character of Jack. I loved Jack. Everyone's like, hey, you know, you need to do this, and she's like, I don't care. I don't care. I have nothing to lose. Like, I didn't do this. My love of my life has been slaughtered. I do not care. And so with that frame of mind, just a lot of stuff goes down. I actually would compare this less to Mr. and Mrs. Smith and more to Karen Slaughter's Pretty Girls because of the premise, because she finds out, oh, my husband been killed. She's basically there at the scene. It's not as dark as Pretty Girls, so don't expect that, but it is very fleshed out, and I loved the characters. Although it is marketed as this, like, cat and mouse, which it kind of is. I would consider this a cat and mouse. It's really relatable and accessible as far as that main character feeling like someone you need to protect and feeling like you are stressed out for her. And that is what made this go by so quickly and what made it feel so fast-paced for me. The ending was a little clean for my taste, but it all did come together quite nicely. It did. Overall satisfying, 3.5 stars. I would definitely recommend it. This would be a good one for like a beach read in the summer. It's not one that you have to like put a whole lot of mental gymnastics and energy into. You can just kind of have a good time with it. The next book that I want to talk to you about, my last 3.5 star book, and that is A Better World. This is by Sarah Langan. She wrote The Good Neighbors, which I have not read, but I'm interested in reading. And this is a new release. It just came out April 16th. And I read this on Everand. It is available on Everand. And again, if you are interested in trying Everand, the app formerly known as SCRIBD, then you can get 60 days free using my link in my link tree. And that's always in the description down below. And I will also get 30 days free. So that's lovely. If you want to try that, you can read this book on Everand, and it should be available because I love it. I love it when books, new releases, are immediately available on Everand. It's just like, yes, yes, it feels like I'm getting that value, you know? This book had the potential to be like one of my favorites of the year, and it didn't quite reach that for me, but I love so many things that this story is doing. I really, really love this. Is a dystopian mystery thriller, potentially lit fic, contemporary. This is very genre bending. It is giving like Stepford Wives dystopian, where there's this utopian society within the obvious dumpster fire of a world that we live in. So it's like just in the near future, but in this slightly near future, the air is just really bad. Like, I mean, we know it's already bad, but it's like you will die, you know, and not by one breath, but slowly and surely. It's really just what we're living in now. I don't know. It's really not that different. The more I try to say it's different, it's not. It's going to be a lot to describe. And I will say that they do a really good job in the book of building this world without making it seem info dumpy. A company town is like a safe town. It's like in this little bubble, you get fresh air, you have all the best schools, and these are the elite. The 0.0001% of people get to live in these company towns, and each one of them have their own distinct culture, and in this town, their culture is called Hollow. They keep saying it's not a religion, that they just like having, you know, a little bit of ritual to appreciate things. So they have 4 festivals throughout the year, and everybody is supposed to participate in these festivals. But this whole Hollow thing, it's just like, it gnaws on you throughout the whole book, because you're like, what? But why? But why? And everybody's very nice. They'll say, I think it's the peace sign that they give. Was it peace sign? There's some kind of sign that they do, or maybe it's prayer hands. I think it's prayer hands, where that's how they greet each other, prayer hands. Anyway, it's giving Midsommar with this whole weird cult-like religious type thing, but don't get fooled by that, because this is not like a culty story, depending on how you look at it. Why do I talk at all? Like, why do I even say words when I contradict everything that I say? The company is called A Better World, and they've created this alternative to plastic called Omnium. Omnium is like, it's like plastic, but it's just better. I can't remember why. It's like biodegradable or something. It's better for the earth. And they also have a town mascot in this town of Plymouth Valley, excuse me. It should have been called Pleasant Valley. It's a bird. It's a bioengineered chicken, essentially. They're called caladrius, but they have only 10% of the footprint that a chicken has. So apparently better for the earth. Again, every time a caladrius shows up, and it's only in this town that that this even exists or is a thing. So it's kind of like, are they worshiping this caladrius? Like, what's going on with this chicken? It's weird. It's weird when you get in there. Like, this is the perspective of this family when they're entering this town. So we're following the Farmer Bowenses. We have Mom and Dad, Linda and Russell, and then Josie and Hip, and they are 15-year-old twins, fraternal twins. Russell has been working fastidiously his entire life in order to get his family into a company town. And somehow he found a way in, but it's on a trial basis. And the way it works in there is that they let let like day workers come in during the day, that like people essentially come and take care of the manual labor and things like that in the town, the lower class of people that are allowed in. But there are a certain amount of people that they will hire in and bring in just because they need like a specialized position for something in the town. Now, when they moved here, Linda quit her job as a doctor so that they could do this, because they're sacrificing a lot, but they want the best lives for their kids. They want their kids to be able to grow up in a safe space. They want them to be able to survive. So they're coming into this as a close, tight-knit family, but we're finding that once they are trying to integrate, they're having a hard time. They want everybody to fit in. And so this family's desperate to fit in, and they're just like ruining the relationships that they have with each other because they're trying to do all these ridiculous things for these people and they don't understand why. The culture is just so different for them, so it's a shock. Start finding out more things about this town, about this company, about things under the surface, and that's where this like dystopian bit comes in. But it does give you that like on edge creepy vibe, what I really liked this whole time, because I was like, what is this? What is happening? Like Midsommar. Like, you don't know what's going on and you're just like, you're just in it, like scared like they are. So I did think this was well done, but I did have some trouble with the pacing, especially towards the end. Once I got to the 60% mark-ish, it just dragged out and dragged out. And it was building up to this last festival, and something's gonna happen at this last festival, and we know that. But after a while, I was just like, okay, let's get to the damn festival already. Like, can we get to, I need to know what's going on. And it just felt like I was being like dragged along, or, you know, like puppeted, like on a string. I'm like, come on. Like, it needed to pick up the pace a little bit towards the end. This is a long book. It did not, I don't think, need to be quite that long. In that last 40%, we could have like kind of made it all come together a little bit more quickly, and I think it would have been more satisfying. But that being said, the amount of work that was put into this, the world building and the connections, the social commentary to our own world and the world that we're living in right now, this whole idea of feeling like you have to be in that 0.0001% in order for your life to have some kind of meaning. And I think especially millennials right now are feeling this because we've been through just like one disaster after the next, and it's like, dude, when can I get a break? Like, just let me be happy, you know, without some natural disaster, some other thing happening that's just gonna devastate an entire world. Like, make it stop. This whole family, like, and you're rooting for them too. So if you like a dystopian, I would check this out. I would recommend this one. I think you'll have a good time with it. And that's it for my 3.5-star books. Yay, let's move on to the 4 stars. I have 6 4-star books. It was really hard for me to even put these in order between, you know, lowest to highest of the 4 stars because they're all so good. I'm excited to talk to you about every single one of these, so let's just get into it. The first one I'm gonna start with and that is Ring Shout. This is by Djeli Clark. I've had this book on my shelves for so long. long, and I am so embarrassed that I have not read it until now. I have no excuses. It's not even that long. It's like 180 pages. I read this for Ashley's 24-hour horror-a-thon with Ashley from Ashley's Little Library, and I co-hosted with her. We do have some sprints that I was co-hosting with her on her channel where we talked a lot about this, so I will link that above and below as well if you're interested in checking that out. This, I don't know what I thought this was gonna be. We were kind of, before we got into it, is this cosmic horror? What is cosmic horror? What is this? I know going into this one that has a lot of discussion about race. How to even describe this one? It's so out there. There's so much that happens in this short little book. I don't even know how this author has crammed so much information and so much storytelling into such few pages. Like, it's mind-boggling to me. Some of the things I did not love about this was at the beginning, the tone and the pacing was just a little bit weird. It was kind of hard to get into. But once I got past that first, like 30%, I'd say, I really got into this. And then another thing, it was a little bit confusing, but super worth it. This book is about hate, and this personifies hate by way of the Ku Klux Klan. Really what this is about is how hate can become a demon, a devil, a monster, and how if we feed that, it can take over. If you are interested in a story about that, then read this, absolutely, because there's no reason not to. It's so good. The metaphors are so on point. The 1915 release of the movie A Birth of a Nation. This is a real life movie that was released in 1915 and spread so much propaganda and so much hate. I'll put some clips up here, I guess. I've seen clips of it in a film class I took, but I don't think I watched the entire thing. So incredibly racist and showing any people of color in this terrible light. And so this actual real life movie did inspire hate. What this author is saying is that that movie, when that happened, in this alternate universe, I guess, so many more people joined the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. And when they did that, they were still human, but at a certain point, once you feed that hate and once you start giving into that hate, it takes over you and you become something entirely different. At that point, you are not a human anymore. You do not have will. You do not have agency. You are just a cog in the machine. And so yeah, we're getting like bigger picture here. And a lot of this does that. It gets very big picture in a very weird kind of spiritual way, reminding me of Tananarive Due in a way where she blends that spirituality and supernatural. But the best thing about this is our three lead characters that we're following, this group of women who are freedom fighters. I loved them so much. I loved these women. The main character is Maurice. These women are fighting the evil. They're just out there doing God's work, you know? Trying to get rid of these demons, but they have the sight. That's the thing. Not everybody can see the demons. Not everybody can tell. And that's the whole nother can of worms there, because like when there are only specific people who can see the evil, who can you trust? How do you trust that? It's reminding me of, oh, and we mentioned this actually at the live reading sprints too, and Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. It's got that same kind of energy, and I think that's why they're calling it cosmic. So this does also have some fantasy elements, I should mention. There is a sword, and there's some like, it's almost like this is a true, okay. So this is a true horror that is kind of leaning into some fantasy tropes. And this is a fantasy book that is leaning into horror. So I think maybe that's the difference, because this did have some fantasy elements in here that I really liked, but that did not detract from the horror. And in fact, the horror elements in this are some of the best horror I've seen in a long time, and specifically the body horror. I don't know how to describe the body horror other than by alluding to this cover and the fact that the eyes are mouths. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. This is a whole new kind of body horror. It's mouth horror. It's like Sarah Gailey said it was a sublime work of revolutionary body horror. And I agree with that. This is revolutionary body horror because it's not any kind of body horror like I've ever read before. I'm going to say body horror one more time just to say it. The mouths and the sounds, and it's like, think of every pore in your body as being a mouth. And that only is just like the tiniest little bit of what you're gonna get out of this. It's gross. It's really gross. Loved it. Like, so good. Everything that, despite the confusion in the middle, despite the weird tone at the beginning and being hard to get into a little bit, this book is doing so many things that that it's clearly not getting enough credit for because it sat on my shelf for so long, and I'll take blame for that. That's on me. Like, we need to know. Like, y'all need to read this if you haven't. There's no reason not to. It's so short and it's so good. So let's, yeah, read that book. Moving on to my next 4-star book, I want to talk about We Were Never Here by Andrea Bartz. I did a taste test video where I read books recommended by Hailey Hughes, and this was part of that, as well as a couple more of these that are coming up. So again, I'll link that one above and below if you want to watch that if you haven't seen it yet and you want to get more in-depth detail about how I felt about it as I was reading it. This one was such a fast read for me. I did not even like take notes on it. I just went so fast. It was something that I just sat down with and enjoyed. So we're following these two girls and they're best friends. They met in college, besties, but they live on opposite sides of the world now. Emily lives in Wisconsin and Kristen lives in Australia. She went there for a job. So they like to meet up at least once a year and go on vacations together, and they like to go to like these really kind of exotic or remote locations. They don't want to just go to the touristy areas. They want to be able to have their own freedom. And the last place they went was Chile. Emily comes back to their room, to her and Kristen's room, and she finds there's a dead man on the floor. Kristen says, oh my gosh, he attacked me. I had to defend myself. And so they bury the body together. You think this is like a once in a lifetime thing. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about this happening again. However, this has happened before to these same two women the year before on their last trip. But the last time it was Emily who had been assaulted and who had to defend herself. So Emily knows exactly what Kristen's feeling, and she wants to support her friend and do whatever she can to help her, because that really messed her up. It messed Emily up really bad when they went through that, and she is still trying to get over this. Lightning has struck twice. She's starting to think, okay, is this a coincidence? Do I really know my best friend as well as I think I know her? Here's the thing that I didn't like when I first heard about this story. I was like, I don't believe this. Like, it's too far to suspend my disbelief. I would immediately, the second time this happened, be suspicious of Kristen. I would be like, Kristen,
what the hell is going on here?
What is going on here? And so I had a hard time believing that if I were in Emily's position, I would react the way that she did. However, this author does a really, really good job of selling you on this friendship and telling you about how their pasts are both broken and they found each other at this like perfect time in college when they needed each other the most. And I was like, oh no, please don't let this go awry. But as you're reading it, you know it's gonna go awry. It was so fast paced, and it definitely gave you that feeling of being in Emily's position and not knowing if she can trust her friend. And the odd thing is that Kristen's not acting like it's bothering her. Also, Emily hasn't quite told Kristen that she's dating a new guy, because sometimes when she talks to Kristen about her boyfriends, Kristen maybe points out some things that aren't healthy for her. And of course, Emily takes this as my friend is helping me out, but maybe she's not. Maybe she's trying to push them away. It was fun. It was fast paced. I liked our characters. Good summer beach read. Again, read this one by the pool. That would be a blast. Toxic relationships. The vacation stuff is not a huge part of it, so don't go into it for that. Next, I want to talk about Listen for the Lie. This is by Amy Tintera. This was a huge hit. It was on somebody's book list. I don't remember who. Maybe Reese's? I'm not sure. If you like a fast-paced thriller with an unreliable narrator, if you like a podcast trope, this is also set in Texas, small-town Texas, so I personally related to that a lot because I live in Texas. This also has the return to small-town trope. This has the crass grandmother character who I absolutely loved, who does not give up about what anyone thinks about her. She's gonna say whatever she wants. She's gonna put her foot wherever she wants, including in her mouth. This does have a little bit of like a romance subplot slash like that like sexual chemistry and slash cat and mouse thing between our lead character and the podcaster. Now, here's the general general description of this, we're following Lucy. She's 29. She lives in LA. She gets fired from her job after the first episode of this podcast is aired. That is essentially accusing her of killing her best friend, Sav, 5 years ago. So she and Sav grew up together in this small town in Texas, and they were kind of like the it girls. And then after high school, she married like the it guy, Lucy, not Sav. And they moved into this beautiful, perfect house. One night, Savannah is murdered. Our main character, Lucy, does not remember anything. She does not know if somebody else did it. She does not know if she herself did it. And she now has this voice in her head pretty much at all times trying to persuade her to kill. It's saying, "Let's kill." Kind of creepy. So we're definitely questioning her sanity throughout this. Classic unreliable narrator. She kind of gets tricked into coming back home because she lost her job and her grandma's celebrating her 80th birthday, and she's like, "You have to be here for this." Meanwhile, Ben, who is the host of this podcast called Listen for the Lie, and is trying to get an interview with her. And he is releasing episodes on a weekly basis, and so you're right in it. You're in it with them. All of this happened 5 years ago. That was when Lucy got up and moved to LA. She was never like directly called out, even though a lot of the people in the town, like the whispers and rumors, a lot of people think she did it. They don't want to see her there in the small town because, you know, she hurt a lot of people. And the fact that she doesn't remember anything, like, they're not buying it. The town is not buying it. So she's back here, she's gonna face this, and she's going to end up helping this podcaster in order to figure out who did this, even if it was herself that did it. I really do think this is like the perfect pitch. I think the synopsis for this is exactly what it says it's going to be. This is one of those rare times where marketing did it right. Like, they told us what this is going to be about, and it was about that, and it hit all of the points that I wanted it to hit. I do like a little bit of a romance subplot in my thrillers. That part was fun. I love a podcast trope, and this one does it so well. I listened to the audio, and it was perfection. It did everything I wanted to do with the podcast element. They have the little intro music, the signature intro music. They have the tagline, everything that makes it feel like a real podcast, and I loved it. It's doing what I want when I'm looking for something like this, and it's not just saying it's doing it, it's following through, and so I love that. I have to give it props for that. This one does remind me a little bit of Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, where we're following this woman who has to go back to her small town to investigate the murders of her loved ones. And then you also have that, while in Dark Places, it's a true crime fan club that she gets involved with to end up going through and solving the murder of her families. In this one, this is an actual podcast, but still in the same vein of the true crime stuff that's going on. So they're both hitting the same notes. I really liked our main character. I was a little, how do I explain this? There's a twist in here. My feelings were hurt a little bit because it changes what we feel about certain character. It took me a moment to like sit down and say, okay, do I actually believe this? But I understand the intent of that. I understand why the author did it that way. I think it makes sense. I think this is definitely something that can be enjoyed by a wide population of people. If you're looking for a fast-paced, fun thriller that does have that unreliable narrator and that podcast trope, then absolutely 100% read this. It was good. It's doing all of the things. It's doing everything right. And it's a fine example of what I would want for something like this. So I would 100% recommend this one pretty broadly to pretty much anyone who's looking for a good thriller. And again, this would be a good summer read too. Highly recommend the audio for that. We have 2 more 4-star books, and then I have a 4.5 star and a 5-star book to talk to you about. So these are all gonna be good. All right, the next book I'm really excited to talk to you about, and that is Jackal. This is by Erin E. Adams. Again, I feel like I'm behind the times on this one. Like, I should have read this much sooner because it's doing so many things, and I love it. It's so thoughtful. It's so, like, gets to the core of so many things. There's social commentary in here. There's supernatural. There's spirituality. Again, this, even more so than Ring Shout, reminded me of Tananarive, for sure, because of that blending of spirituality and supernatural, and it's exploring this world. It's forcing you to explore this world in which your reality may not be what you think it is. And so if we're open to saying, okay, maybe this is the real world, but things can happen that we don't know about, almost in like that cosmic level, but not quite, then we can explore so many so many things within this. So we're following, I think her name's Elizabeth actually. Is it Elizabeth? Yeah, her name's Elizabeth and she is of Haitian descent. She's got a French last name and she again is coming back to her hometown for her best friend's wedding. The first like 30% of this I would say reminded me of When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. We have a black woman going back home to her small town for a wedding. However, after that it diverges. This town is a very small, it's like an old mining town. It's past its prime and it's primarily white, but there are some black families that live in this town and that have for years. There is something about the woods in this town, something about the woods and black people. Elizabeth, or Liz specifically, does not like these woods. She's kind of afraid of them. So when she finds out that her best friend's wedding is going to be on her brother's property that's on all of this land, she's not too happy about it. But this is her best friend growing up, who also is white, who is marrying a black man and has a 10-year-old black daughter. But anyway, every year it seems like a black child goes missing in these woods in this town. When they're at this wedding, lo and behold, Liz's best friend daughter goes missing. And of course, Liz was the one who was supposed to be watching her. And so she feels so guilty and she needs to get to the bottom of this, not only to save, you know, her best friend and her essentially niece, but she has that added guilt of like being the one responsible for not watching her when it was time. And oof, so she's really got to get something going on. This did get pretty wild towards the end. This is super ambitious. And Erin Adams even says that in her own Goodreads review of this story. And it is, it's very ambitious. It's doing so many things, but I'm so impressed with this author. I'm impressed with everything that she packed into this story and everything she was able to say through these characters and through this storytelling. This is touching on black and brown people in white spaces. This is touching on feeling like there's competition between each other to be successful, like there's not enough room for there to be multiple black families that are successful in this town, and so they feel like they're pitted against one another in that sense. And for this being her debut novel, horror novel, oh my gosh, just like so impressive. I cannot wait to see what else this author comes out with. I'm very impressed and I really, really enjoyed this. So I would 100% recommend this. Okay, now for my highest rated 4-star book, and this one I didn't read in any vlog, I just read it for fun, and I really liked it, and that is Stranded by Sarah Goodwin. This is a thriller, but it could also be one of those like literary fiction type thrillers, but no, I would say it qualifies as a thriller, because it is, hold on, pacing's a little bit slower than a typical thriller, and it's a little bit longer, but it's worth it. It does not feel long. This is 392 pages. And honestly, this situation that unfurls within this story is my biggest fear. And not even the obvious things that seem scary, like the fact that this is set on an island and it's like a survivor situation. People do compare this to Lord of the Flies meets Survivor, the TV show, because there is a reality TV show element in this that I really liked. And that's what really intrigued me in this. However, it's not doing the reality TV thing that I wanted it to do, but it's still doing its own thing that is original and that is really well done. I don't think that this cover is doing this justice. I think more people need to read this one. And I first heard about this from Beth over at Beth Morvant, and she read it like last year or the year before and really liked it and recommended it to me then. And I've had several people recommend this to me since, so I thought it was time to pick it up. We're following 8 contestants. They are going off to this remote island in order to live successfully for a year. In this scenario for this TV show, they are supposed to imagine that there was some kind of pandemic, apocalypse, something, and the 8 of these people made it to this remote island. I think it's in Scotland. Yeah, Scottish island. They have to essentially restart civilization. So that was like their goal going in. And they have to stay there for a year. And this is one that a lot of people say don't read the synopsis on the book. I read the synopsis and it does spoil it. The spoiler is not really what you think it is, because the story just keeps going. Where you think this is going to end, it doesn't. It continues. It keeps going. And that's where the like actual scary part comes in, because I'm not afraid about them being stranded on an island having to fend for themselves. I would be totally fine in isolation. I would love it. I would put my feet back take care of me. And I would try to help out as much as I can. But this main character that we're following, Maddie, I loved her so much. She is so relatable. And she goes into this with the best of intentions. She's got some stuff going on with her past that we're not really sure about. She's kind of flighty about it and doesn't really explain it that well to us with her mom and her past situation and relationships. But she comes in with the best of intentions. She's self-deprecating, but she's willing to put in the hard work, and she's willing to try her best to communicate with these other people and give them the benefit of the doubt that they're all here with the same intentions. However, it doesn't work out that way. And there are bullies in this group. There are men who think they need to be in charge. And the way that she is treated is gonna really bother some people. And it did bother me, but it also is what kept my interest, because that is my biggest fear, of being misunderstood, of going into a situation and giving everyone else in it the benefit of the doubt. Like, not only are you stuck in a group project, but she's pulling her weight, and then they're trying to gaslight her into thinking that she's not. The gaslighting is hard. It's hard. But the whole time, that's what kept me invested in this, because I was like, no, you are gonna get your comeuppance. You're doing all the right things, Maddie. You're making all of the right choices. Also, she's like a horticulturist, so she knows about plants and things on this island that other people don't. So she does serve a purpose that no one else can replace. And yeah, it just gets really wild. So let's say that. Don't go into this for the reality show element, because it's not about the reality show. It's about these people and the decisions that they make when they think nobody is watching. But here's what I want from a reality TV show. And if there are any authors watching this and you want to take this idea, go for it. I may do it one day too, but we need more rep for this. I'd rather have a reality TV show where it's like some kind of competition show where they're trying to win some money. Doesn't have to be on an island, but something where obviously the production team is going to try to turn these people against each other, where they're going to manipulate, like The Bachelor, where they kind of manipulate what these people are saying through edits and post-production to up the drama. And I want to see that happen, but I want to start the story after the reality show has already happened, and as it's like as it's airing on TV, and something's being exposed that's motivating these characters to protect something, right? They're gonna be exposed for something or something along those lines. Think the Jinx, but not true crime. And they have to then, I don't know, maybe kill somebody or something like that. But then what would be really cool is if we could go back and we could have flashbacks to get that reality TV experience of them while they're filming it. But then maybe also we could get snaps of the finished product so we can see what actually happened versus how it was manipulated by post-production and editing. That is what I want out of like a reality TV show novel. And if anyone has heard of a book like that, please tell me. I want to read it immediately. But if not, I hope we see something like this in the future, because I would like to read that. Anyway, let's move on. All right, it's time to move on to my 4.5-star book. And you may have guessed, since I have not mentioned this yet, that one of these, this one specifically, is my short story collection, and that is Bad Dolls by Rachel Harrison. I just started reading Rachel Harrison last fall, I guess. Really, really love her writing. I think it's insightful. I think it's feminist. And just so you know, y'all, if I ever use the word feminist, I'm not talking about just women. I'm talking about the current wave of feminism, which includes intersectionality. So I'm talking about anyone who is not white, who is differently abled. I'm talking about anyone who is not gender binary. I'm talking about anyone in the queer community, just any level of intersection where any person can be marginalized. That is what I'm referring to, just to be clear about that. So this is clearly feminist. It's only 4 short stories, but first of all, I love that this short story collection, it's very short. It's only 100 and some pages, 140 pages, I think, something like that. Each of these stories is like 40-ish pages, we'll say, but it's only 4 stories, and it's all by the same author. They're kind of weird in a way, but so satisfying. Each one of these is told in a way that does exactly what I think a short story should do. It should hook you immediately. It should give you something to think about and have something to say. And then it should have just like a little unexpected or twist ending. A lot of times there's not just like a regular twist in a short story because there's no time for that. Your formatting has got to be different. But usually it ends on like a little bit of a, like how I like my novels to end. I love that kind of ending, and I seem to find that more when I'm reading short story collections, which I appreciate. So let me just give you the Goodreads description of these because they do a good job of giving you an idea of what it's about without giving too much away, which is kind of hard to do when it comes to short stories. So 4 stories. The first one is called Reply Hazy, Try Again, and this is about this girl or woman who she finds a mysterious magic 8-ball that might just have the answers she's been looking for or might lead her down a path of self-destruction. In the next story, The Bachelorette, a bridesmaid attends her childhood's best friend's bachelorette weekend. This is becoming a theme in this wrap-up, I guess. And there are potential blood sacrifices. In Goblin, this one I really liked. It's about an app that helps you, it's like a weight loss app. And there's this little goblin and it kind of nags at you when you go to eat. In this story, that goblin becomes like sentient. And then in the last and the titular story of this, Bad Dolls, probably the best of it, and I love that it was saved for last as well. We're following this woman who's had a death in the family. Her sister has passed, and she comes into possession of this porcelain doll that has these really lifelike eyes. And she thinks that it could offer some connection to her lost sister. It's funny, it's dark, it's got all the right stuff. I really, really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it. It was kind of hard to find. Did I have to find this on Audible? Oh, Libby. I got this from Libby, so I listened to that through my library. But Rachel Harrison's books are not available on Everand that I've ever seen. So typically I've had to get her stuff from Audible and use credits for that. Totally worth it though. I love her writing. She's got a dark aesthetic, but she's got so much more than that too. And I love that for her. And then lastly, my 5-star book, the one we've been waiting for, the 5-star that took 4 months to come to me. Like seriously, I'm so over this drought of 5 stars. And I do think I have been a little bit more critical on my reviews. Maybe not critical, but more discerning, I suppose. And so I'm not giving out as many 5-star books as I used to because I really want that magic feeling when I give a book a 5-star review. I want that like, you know, that little extra oomph, je ne sais quoi. So my 5-star book in April is Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. This probably isn't a surprise to those of you who have been telling me to read this book, who knew I was going to love this book. And here we are, I did. This kind of reminded me, it's beauty horror, first of all. It's beauty horror, so it's very specifically that popular genre right now, alongside things like Rouge. Another one that's coming out, if it's not already out, is called Beautyland, that I'm also interested by. I love this new genre because it feels so referential of our times, of this world that we're living in that's kind of obsessed with beauty, and it makes us take a look at ourselves, these routines that we get invested in and don't even think twice about. And we're just like, why are we doing this? Why though? But why? Anyway, so it's giving Rouge in that sense, but it's also kind of reminding me of Monstrilio, which I really, really loved. It's definitely horror, but it's using, like I said, it's using this like beauty scam. In this case, it's a company called Holistic, and they're like a green, earth-friendly, but very much for the super, super rich. And they provide you with these experimental and new, what are these called? Not surgeries. What are they? Treatments? I don't know. You know, they get carried away. They get carried away with this. It's almost dystopian in a sense too. Like it kind of has that dystopian vibe. And it has that literary, like it's saying something, but it's presented in a way that's really accessible and that I think a lot of people could enjoy. Now, some things about this story are a little bit pretentious, which we know I like, but I don't think it's over the top. And I think it's very intentional because it's wanting you to see that the people who are getting these services are that elite top 1%. So let me just give you the description that the book says in case you haven't heard of this one. So we're following this main character and she is a musician, she's a pianist, but she's not playing piano anymore. She quit. Her parents immigrated from China, brought her over here to give her a chance. Now, her parents are both also musicians and just really, really beautiful musicians, and they didn't want to push that on her, but when she was growing up, she got an interest in it and she became very, very good at it. And she ended up going to this conservatory for music and was very impressive, but one night her parents came to watch her play, and on that night there was a terrible accident, and now she is working as a dishwasher. Her parents are in a home now because they cannot take care of themselves. She's just going through the motions and trying to survive. She's renting this apartment and she has all these other roommates and she doesn't even get her own space. She's just having a really hard time. And she comes across this woman, or this woman comes across her and recognizes her from the YouTube videos that she used to put up online when she was a kid. Turns out this woman is affiliated with Holistic and asks her to come work for them. Now, all of the women who work here at Holistic are exceptionally beautiful women. They're all cultured. A lot of them are musicians because they want that. They want that for their look, for their, you know, that's what they're selling, beauty and health. One thing though is that they say that they're very invested in cultural diversity within their company, yet as our main character is looking around, she's thinking everyone who works there looks exactly the same. And she's feeling like she is the only one that looks different from anybody else, and clearly she is the ethnic hire for this, but whatever, they're offering her money, they're offering her a way out of this hole that she's gotten herself into. She makes friends, she gets involved with several other characters. There is some queer rep in here as well, which I really loved. The body horror in here actually was really excellent. It reminded me a little bit of Our Wives Under the Sea because it has that quality to it that is of nature. I don't know how to explain this. There's some stuff going on with Holistics that is totally not above ground, not at all. The way it plays out, I love what they're trying to say about race. I love what they're trying to say about the beauty industry in general. I loved following our main character. I was grossed out. I was intrigued. There's so much rep in here that is just like amazing. Cultural rep, musical rep, identity, generational trauma, and there's just so much going on in here, but it didn't feel like one of those overly literary ones. It didn't feel like I had to sacrifice my experience in order to get what I was meant to get out of this book. I feel like I got the experience as well as what the book was trying to say and what the book was trying to do. I feel like it did everything, and that's why this was a 5-star. Like, I honestly have no complaints. Once I got into it, I was completely in it. That is a little bit pretentious, like I said before, but that also is bringing that element or that quality to it that makes your hair stand up, that makes you sit on the edge of your seat, that makes you want to keep reading the book. So good. 5 stars. Highly recommend. Now, my internet is apparently out and I'm supposed to be live in an hour and a half. So I now need to figure out what I'm going to do for my live show book club tonight. So I'm going to leave it at that with you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you are still here, give me like a lips or makeup or nail polish emoji, something with beauty for natural beauty. Let me know also in the comments down below if I have convinced you to pick up any of these, or if you have read them and maybe you had different views than I did. And what did you read this month? What was your favorite book that you read in March or April? I appreciate you guys so much. Don't forget that life is short. So read Riley. Here we go, here we go. Cheers! And goodbye!